Well, the situation is this. Mr. Murdoch usually gets his way from politicians of whatever political stripe, partly because they're absolutely petrified of him. Don't take my word for that. Take the quotes from members of the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee in the House of Commons, elected parliamentarians, who told the media that they had not pursued the News of the World phone hacking story quite as diligently as they might because they were scared that Mr. Murdoch's newspapers would come after them, which might be a reason why this bid by Mr. Murdoch should have been passed on to the Competition Commission in a way that would have allowed it to be considered without any politicians being accused of fear or favour. That's my point of view. Let's hear from an expert on these matters from the University of Kent's Centre for Journalism, Professor Tim Luckhurst. Tim, thanks for joining us again.
Pleasure, George.
Tell me, were you surprised by Secretary Hunt's decision?
I was slightly surprised by Secretary of State Jeremy Hunt's decision, in the sense that I think that he could have left this to the Competition Commission, because the Competition Commission would have reached the same decision and he would not then have had to shoulder responsibility for a decision which is politically controversial. But I'm not astonished by it.
He saved Mr. Murdoch a lot of money by not having to go down that route.
I don't think he saved Mr. Murdoch any money at all, because we do not yet know how much Mr. Murdoch will have to pay in order to buy the remaining 61% of BSkyB that he doesn't already own. He will have to pay, I suspect, a lot more than £8 billion for it.
Maybe 10. Some people are saying 10 billion.
It could be as much as 11.
My goodness. No, what I meant was the process of going down many, many months of the Competition Commission looking into this would probably have driven the share price still further. It would probably have been a frenzy, but we'll never know that.
We won't.
11 billion is a lot to pay for BSkyB, which I seem to recall at the beginning was on its uppers. So just exactly what would he be getting for his money?
He would be getting an extremely profitable television operation, an extremely profitable online operation, a multimedia partnership with his newspapers, which can drive profitability even higher, and allow him to invest in very high-quality programming and very high-quality journalism. He would also, according to his critics, be getting the opportunity to restrict or distort competition through cross-promotion and bundling, and potentially too much influence over the advertising market, which they say would distort the advertising market with cross-platform deals promoted in Sky television programmes and News Corporation newspapers. We'll see.
I mean, I saw you quoted as saying that they put a lot of money into high-quality programming, but actually they don't on Sky. They actually make virtually no programs. They buy programs from HBO and the rest on the excellent Sky Atlantic channel, relatively new, of course, and they buy football, and I watch it and enjoy it. And they buy movies, but they don't actually make much in the way of programming.
They make increasingly large amount of television, and they spend money with production companies that make very high quality television. I think you're a little unfair to Sky in describing their sports coverage as simply being buying football. They've actually revolutionised the way in which live sport is covered.
Yeah, that's fair. I accept that. Yeah, I mean, I'm an avid consumer of it and hold it in the highest regard. But the £1 billion a year it's currently making, is that likely to rise, do you think?
I think that it is likely to go upwards, yes, but I think that it's also a very canny move for Mr. Murdoch, because he has been a major newspaper proprietor throughout his adult life, and he is buying into television and online and expanding his holdings in television, online and multimedia at a time when his newspaper assets are becoming less valuable and are likely to continue to become less valuable. So I think that this is a long-term balancing of the portfolio. As Mr. Murdoch approaches his 80th birthday, he's leaving the company in what he regards as a safe condition for his family to inherit.
Yes. Now, the 1 billion and maybe rising if it rises, it will be in part, won't it, at least according to the other newspapers and other media organizations, because he will then be able more successfully to exploit this newly dominant position. You mentioned the term bundling. Maybe we should explain bundling, which seems to me quite a key point to the listeners. What do you mean by bundling?
Mr. Murdoch would be able to say, if you buy a subscription to the Times newspaper, you will get an offer on your subscription to Sky. Or if you buy a subscription to Sky, you will get a special offer on your subscription to the Times, the Sunday Times, the Sun, the News of the World. He'll be able to offer bundling across internet services, telephone services, etc. But, George, let's be fair. The commercial rivals who object to this are essentially objecting to Mr. Murdoch's success. Does anyone really believe that they would not wish to do the same thing if they were in a similarly lucrative position?
No, absolutely. But we, the consumers and the public, have to take a judgment on what's best for plurality in the media here.
Yes.
It's not necessary for us to accept the po-faced protestations from these rivals. I agree with that. Now, what does it mean, do you think, for us as a public? How could we lose? Are there any ways in which we as the public could lose from that?
Yes, of course. There are many ways in which potentially we could lose, because when any company approaches a dominant position in the market, it approaches a position in which it can increase the charge for the services it provides and essentially challenge us to accept that we have no choice but to pay the increased charges. Now, of course, Ofcom has a capacity to restrict that. It can regulate the prices charged by News Corporation, by BSkyB. But in the past, large dominant companies have been able to exploit their position. We see that in other sectors of the economy. But I think there's something very important that we have to recognise about the media sector of the economy. And that is that BSkyB's profitability does not reflect similar dominance in terms of reach. The BBC's reach as a television company is much, much greater than Sky's. The BBC reaches about 33.5 million users, Sky about 11.7 million users. In fact, ITN is nearly twice as large in terms of reach as Sky. So we shouldn't confuse profitability with reach.
Yeah.
BSkyB is not dominant in terms of reach, and in that sense, its capacity to exploit this position is not quite as dramatic, which is, after all, George, why the European community, why Ofcom, and why the Competition Commission, I think, in the end, have or would all have approved this deal. Europe and Ofcom have both approved it already, and I don't think the Competition Commission would have reached a different decision.
Professor Tim Luckhurst from the University of Kent Centre for Journalism, thank you very much indeed. We're talking about Mr. Murdoch's lucky break from the Tory Liberal coalition government, which is likely to have feathered his family's nest for many decades to come. And some think there's nothing wrong with that. I suppose Professor Tim would be one of those. What do you think?